Hi. So I just wanted to make a video really that talked you through the process of the individual oral. So it sort of almost serves as a guide to the IO that you can refer to in your own time and go back and listen to again, uh, and sort of should help support you through the entire process. So I'll start by just explaining what the IO actually is. In essence, it's a 10-minute oral presentation that you prepare in advance, and that's obviously important. And I think as an activity, it really rewards systematic, a systematic and methodical approach. The more time and effort you put into it, the better your result will be. So it's a 10-minute oral presentation that you prep in advance. And then that's followed by a 5-minute question and answer session discussion with the teacher. So that's basically the teacher's chance to try and get you to address things that perhaps you haven't addressed, or hit certain elements of the marking criteria that you haven't hit in a 10-minute presentation. So obviously that can't really be prepared for. But you should see that as an opportunity, because that's giving the teacher a chance to say, okay, they haven't done enough language analysis. I can ask them a question about language technique and sort of force you to do that. So it's 15 minutes in total. All of you will essentially address this prompt. Examine the ways in which the global issue of your choice is presented through the content and form of one of the literary works that you've studied. So that would obviously be poetry, prose, drama, and one of the non-literary bodies of works that you've studied. So that if you're in my class, that would be either Cosmopolitan or GQ magazine covers. What else have we done? Generation Wealth documentary and photos, the blog posts of Reniero Smith, The Trouble with Women, etc., etc. So basically what you need to do is construct an argument that explores and explains how a global issue of your choice has been treated, represented, or presented by an author, authors in two extracts of your choice, one that's literary and one that's non-literary. Some of you might be thinking, okay, so what is a global issue? It seems strangely vague and a little bit too broad. In the IB, it has to hit three criteria for it to be considered a global issue in relation to the individual oral. It has to be of wide-scale significance. So it has to be something substantial and important. It has to be felt in everyday local context. There has to be sort of some personal level to it. And it can't exist. It has to be transnational. It can't be just specific to one particular geographical location. So I've listed here some global issues, some examples of global issues taken from either my class this year or some that the IB have suggested themselves through the My IB website, so you can have a read of those. The exploitation of the weak by the powerful, the way women are limited by patriarchal societies, the damage and impact of financial inequality, a fear of the future, structural and systemic racism, the perception and representation of refugees, immigrants. So they can be really broad, and it's really up to you. Most ideas can be tweaked and molded so that they become an appropriate global issue. And I just saw a nice little graphic that I thought sort of sums it all up. So you end up with a global issue that connects both a literary work and a non-literary body of work. And then from there, in the literary work, you identify a 40-line passage, a passage of a maximum of 40 lines for you to analyze. And for the non-literary body of work, again, you find either a passage or a series of still images taken from a scene, because it could be taken from a movie. But you also need to have a knowledge and understanding of the works that these extracts are taken from. And it quite clearly specifies that in the marking criteria. So the marking criteria is just what it always is: knowledge and understanding, analysis, focus and organisation, language. The bits that I think are worth paying attention to are here in the knowledge and understanding section, when it talks about sustained interpretation of their implications in relation to the global issue. It says that down here as well. It says persuasive interpretation of their implications in relation to the global issue. But the idea is that the global issue is front and center. Everything that you say about the text, all of your knowledge, all of your understanding of the extracts, the works, the text, has to be through the lens of the global issue. Everything has to be tied back to it. Otherwise, you're not going to score marks. And I think it's also worth making a note of the fact that you have to refer to the extract, but also to the wider work and text. It can't all be focused on the extracts themselves. You have to show good or excellent knowledge and understanding of the works and the texts that the extracts are taken from. You'll be penalised if you don't. Then if you come across to criterion B, the analysis bit, again, you'll see that all of your analysis, of course it has to be insightful, of course it has to be relevant, but importantly, it has to be tied back to how these stylistic features, how these choices that the authors are making are being used to explore and present a global issue. So again, the global issue is front and center. So it's worth bearing that in mind when you're thinking about the I/O. So when you're asked to start preparing your I/O, you'll have covered a series of literary texts, and a series of bodies of work. And so you should be able to sift through all of that, look back over your OneNote, look back over your notes and your learner portfolios, and start to think about, okay, I've got this vague global issue in mind. I would quite like to explore it in relation to this body of work and this literary work. So I'm imagining that I'm going through the process, and I wanted to do something on gender, the way in which gender identity is constructed in texts, particularly female identity. And so I chose a Cosmopolitan magazine front cover as my extract for the body for the non-literary text, and a poem from Duffy's World's Wife as my literary text. And you can see where I started was I had my global issue loosely in mind, something to do with gender, female identity, the way in which it's constructed, shaped, explored in texts. And I just got those two texts, I put them onto a page in OneNote, and I annotated them with that global issue in mind. I didn't go into it in huge detail. I just started to gather ideas, and so you can see it's all a bit messy. It's not particularly well organized, but obviously in your own time, you can sort of have a look at this kind of things that I've written on here, excuse the writing, and sort of get a sense of what I was thinking and where I was going with it. And it's the same here with Salome, the poem I chose for Duffy. I annotated it very much with the global issue in mind. I then moved on to the next stage in the process in my mind, which is sort of really brainstorming the global issue. So at this point, I've tightened up my global issue, and that's what I've decided I'm going to look at and explore, how the female identity is constructed in Cosmopolitan front covers, specifically the one that you've just seen, and by Caroline Duffy in The World's Wife, specifically with the poem Salome in mind. And so again, I just started brainstorming ideas. And again, you can see it's all really messy. It's just throwing my thoughts down on paper. So once you've done that and you've got some ideas floating around and you're well underway, the process is starting to gather momentum, you need to organize those so it's formalize it slightly. So then I sort of went on to I started typing rather than writing, and I started organizing it into tables and thinking, okay, I'd probably want to talk about purpose, tone, structure, form, language, graphology, reach little mini conclusions. So I started to take my ideas and start to shape them into areas that I'm going to focus on when I'm constructing my argument. Then from there, I basically wrote an essay. Now, I've called it a transcript, which is slightly misleading because in no way, shape or form am I going to use that as an actual transcript, as a script for my I.O. There's no way that I'm going to learn that word for word. There's no way that I'm going to use that in my I.O. in any way, really. But I often find that if I want to develop knowledge and understanding of something, the best way of doing that is to essentially write an essay on it. And going through the process of writing the essay, the detail, the level of thinking that you have to go through, I think it really helps form that knowledge and understanding, and it helps you start to construct a detailed argument. So I basically wrote that up, and again, there it is in its entirety, and you've got access to this OneNote page, and so you can sort of go back and have a read over it. Like I said, I never wrote this with the intention of learning it word for word and regurgitating it in the I.O. I'm not sure that's useful in terms of you could get halfway through, forget where you were, and it could sabotage your entire I.O. It was more a process of just me developing my thoughts and strengthening my knowledge, deepening it in relation to how I think the texts explore the global issue of my choice. The next stage, I think, is obviously the most important. When you go into the actual I.O. itself, what you'll have with you are copies of the texts with no annotation, clean copies of the text, the extracts, and a bullet point plan. And this is what your bullet point plan will look like. It will be on a piece of paper exactly like this. This is the sort of the form that the IB want you to use. And you're allowed to have 10 bullet points. And those bullet points are allowed to probably add up to around about 250 words. I wouldn't say any more than that. They're not intended to be a script. They're not meant to be. You're not allowed to have them have full sentences. Then it's certainly not to be read from. It's a bullet point plan that you will use to keep you on track, to jog your memory, to make sure you're covering all the points that you want to cover. So I went through the process of reducing that essay, transcript, whatever you want to call it, to that. And it was a crucial process. And that's what I'm taking in with me, and that's what I'm going to use to help me structure and organize my I.O. When I'm there under pressure and the clock's ticking. So it's an important document, and you want to get it right. I think I personally feel that it works best doing the essay and then doing the bullet point list. You could add in an extra process. You could, after organizing ideas, you could then put a bullet point list together, go from there to like build that up into some kind of essay, and then build it back down again. Reduce it back down again, to end up with that bullet point list. And then really, essentially, you need to get practicing it. Now, as teachers, we can't hear your I.O.s. It's not allowed. But you can practice them as many times as you like. And you can listen back to them, and your peers can listen to them and give you feedback and advice. And it's a really valuable process. And I know that because I tried to do it just now. I tried to do the first half of an I.O. based on that Cosmopolitan magazine cover. And you can listen to it there. It's here on the screen. Bear in mind, it is my first attempt. It's certainly unpolished and incomplete, and it's okay. I think it's a good first draft of sorts, a first attempt. But I would certainly want to go back and listen to it again, refine it, improve it, be more concise, work out where I've repeated myself, work out what I've missed out, and basically improve it and try it again and again and again until I get to a point where I'm happy with it. Like I said, the one I've recorded here I think is okay, but I certainly haven't smashed it. And if you look back at my bullet point list, if you listen to that and then look at my bullet point list and my transcript, you'll find that I didn't get through half as much of this stuff as I wanted to. And so there's certainly a need for me to be a bit more concise. But anyway, I hope this little video will be useful to you. It should function as a reminder of what the IO actually is, remind you of sort of crucial things in the mark scheme. I've hopefully taken you through the process. Start by annotating your texts, having a loose global issue, then brainstorm it, formalize your ideas, turn it into an essay or a transcript of sorts, reduce that to a bullet point list of around about 250 words, and then basically get practicing it. So yeah, I hope this has been useful to you.